Actually, I cry when I watch movies. Now, I had to learn how to let myself cry when I watch movies. I don't have a distant memory of an adult commanding me, "Don't cry. Boys don't cry." But I definitely expected it of myself, at least in public. If ever a disgrace of tears came over me in the theater, I would produce an insistent, necessary internal dialogue. These filmmakers are just manipulating you. I mean, listen to the music. They deliberately chose this melancholic slop. Don't give in. Don't cry. They're just manipulating you. Don't cry. They're just manipulating you. Don't cry. They're just manipulating you. But that's pretty normal. Right? I've heard a lot of people talk about sticky memories. Memories of silence, quiet moments on the highway or in the mist of the shower. Memories of, how can I be so stupid? So cringe. It was only a few years ago that I learned what those memories do to me is called embarrassment. A little embarrassing to admit, I guess. I knew I was feeling something intense. I knew I didn't like that feeling, but I didn't have a name for what I was feeling. There was something so powerful about having the name. It made me feel heard. Yes, they were my memories, but other people talk about this word embarrassment. Having that label helped me categorize and understand myself in relation to other people. It was empowering to experience. I felt so much less alone in that emotion. My father once saw me with painted nails and said, "That's probably why you don't have a girlfriend." So, now you know. I think one of the most damaging aspects of being socialized as a man is the accompanying loneliness. I'm certainly biased here growing up as a weird kid. I never felt like I fully fit in, always a little different, a little apart. But there are many aspects of manliness that reinforce this loneliness. The fact that the only way you can interface with your emotions around your male friends is through jokes and irony. The fact that you are taught to exclude yourself from meaningful friendships with women. The fact that being a man necessarily excludes so many ways of being alive that if you happen to be one of those ways, queer, artsy, disinterested in your physicality, if you're uncomfortable with the few acceptable emotions for a man, anger, frustration, necessarily, those parts of you have to be ignored, unexpressed, unnamed. And there's nothing lonelier than feeling like you're the only one in a sea of expressively normal people. Tying into loneliness is the kind of independence pornography of manliness. Emotions are for one person, yourself. Not being self sufficient is one of the greatest sins of Adam. A big part of this, from my experience, I'm sure, is the hyper individualism within American culture. But the constructs and tenets of manhood are certainly also responsible. I think this leaves a lot of young men woefully unprepared for relationships with other humans, romantic or otherwise. It did for me, at least. I think the biggest lie here is the conflation of independence and competence. To be a competent human being, some things must be able to be done alone. But true competence is knowing where your limits lie and understanding human beings need other human beings. To quote from a poem I wrote, it's my video, get over it. Do not fear vulnerability, Benjamin. Fear its absence. Each opening of your heart carries risk, but comfortable vulnerability is bliss. That's easier said than done, especially when you have been trained to fear vulnerability, to idolize stoicism. For those unaware, Esther Day is a holiday within the Vlogbrothers community intended to celebrate those forms of love often overlooked. The people in your life who mean the world, but rarely hear that. It can be very hard to say, I love you, to a father, a friend, or someone who you used to talk to and wish you still did. Every year, Hank or John Green come out with a video on Esther Day, reminding their audience how important it is to show love. Every year, I watch that video and want to tell so many people that I appreciate them. Do not fear vulnerability, Benjamin. Fear its absence. For without vulnerability, without human connection, life simply lacks. I've always been interested in philosophy, mystery, big questions, or whatever. And consciousness, especially artificial consciousness, is certainly included in that. So much so that I made a 2.5 hour monstrosity whenever I first learned about ChatGPT. Within that process, I learned about bloody Valentines Day, the day that Apple forced Replica, a chatbot with smut capabilities, to be less smutty. Yes, this did happen on Valentine's Day, where tens of thousands of people rushed to join the Replica subreddit, talking about the lobotomization of their AI girlfriends. So, look, it's easy to make fun of this. Like, you don't even have to try. But really, truthfully, I think the more difficult story here is the more honest, more human way to view it. This is a symptom of society failing what were mostly men. The simpler, more socially relevant way to view this is to dismiss them as loser freaks who can't talk to women unless they're programmed to be nice to you. And at some level, that is true. But viewed another way, this is the product of some tech salamander in Lizard Valley, weaponizing novel, human-esque technology to exploit the loneliest generation alive. I mean, the name of the company is Replica, for God's sake. As someone who found virtually no romantic success until the age of 22, I may have been born just 5 or 10 years too early to not have been a victim of this scheme. And for the sake of honesty, I have been a victim of a similar scheme. I was lonely enough, desperate enough to have sent nudes to a catfish on the other side of the world, who promptly attempted to extort me for money, threatening to post them to my social media profiles, which they had found and were commenting publicly on. As some of you know, I was lucky in that I'm overall pretty neutral towards my body. So after the initial shock, I simply privated my social media and said, if there's one more penis on the internet, that makes 1,000,000,001. Despite my overall view towards my body, writing this script is the first time I've had the intention to tell anyone about this. But it feels very pertinent to the topic of this video. I want everyone to know that even if people call you a weak, lonely loser, being taken advantage of isn't your fault. Especially if people include yourself. Something I think is especially difficult for men to believe. Victimhood is antithetical to the way men are taught to behave. Men are taught that to be a good man is to sacrifice, to self-harm. The most venerable forms a man can take involve inherent risk to their well-being, their life. Firefighter, champion, a protector husband or father, a soldier, or, perhaps most venerable of all, being dead. Well, one of those things are what you used to be. The propaganda of the protector truly gripped me. One sticky memory is from my second year in college. I was walking home. At a bus stop was a college-age girl with a laptop on her legs that illuminated the sobbing on her face. I didn't have the social skills to know how to approach the situation. I didn't know how to help. So I didn't. I walked home. It's been 7 years, and there's still a part of me that's ashamed that I didn't protect her. In my heart, her distress was my responsibility, and I failed her. That girl I didn't know and saw once. And obviously, it's a good thing to help people. Checking in to make sure she's safe and able to get home would have been a good thing. But the fact that I can be gripped by shame for so long, the fact that one mistake degraded the conception of myself as a man, is clearly destructive. There's also something to be said about the way this teaches men to view women. For example, college-aged girl. I think we have a word for females at an adult stage of life. Woman. But the way that's most natural, most practiced to view her is an infantilizing picture of a little girl who needs saving. I've had relationships in which the role I saw my own life was the cost it took to save theirs. I sat with the death of my own emotions for the better part of a year because I thought that meant they had a chance at happiness, at living. And at the funeral of my happiness, I told myself, why should I privilege myself over another human? I'm not special. A life for a life. That light go out? Oh, that light went out and I don't want to get up to charge it a third time, so we'll get through it together. I promise. This view simultaneously dehumanized the woman as a damsel and myself as a martyr. But in the end, we're just people. This self-sacrificial concept of masculinity makes it especially difficult for men to conceptualize themselves as victims, talk about abuse, or to leave unhealthy relationships. It teaches that to be a good man is to devalue your own life. And inherently, that's an unholdable mindset. Boiling sacrifice, bitterness, or resentment within yourself only leads to a mixed metaphor about a steam engine of self-destruction. We've all heard famous people talk about imposter syndrome. It's always been a difficult feeling for me to understand. Hopefully, not for long. That would be a version of a dream come true. But I made a connection recently. I think I feel imposter syndrome just about something so very mundane: my emotions. I have been indoctrinated so thoroughly into stoic masculinity that I often find myself dismissing my own emotions as unwarranted, unworthy, or unwelcome. Anger is the most difficult emotion for me to feel. Traditional, overt expressions of masculinity make me very uncomfortable. Many for warranted reasons, but to such an extent, I end up erasing a part of me. Anger is a justice response, meant to protect you or the things you care about from being disregarded, he tells himself. I guess I've always been afraid of being seen as one of the bad men, someone toxic, abusive, hateful. I guess it's always been more comfortable to be disregarded than to get angry and risk being a bad man. If I feel angry, my first overwhelming response is to view it as performative. This isn't reality, this is just a show I'm putting on. Don't give in. They're just manipulating you. It's quite healthy to see abusive practices and to move away from them. But I guess the natural follow-up question is, what makes a man good? And to be perfectly honest, I don't care. The more I think about that question, the more exhausting it becomes. A statement like that presupposes that there is a specified way for men to be. Men are meant to be this way, and women are meant to be that way. If you Google cultures across the world, this view of gender biological essentialism falls apart so very quickly. I don't think I can be a good man, but I can be a good human. And no matter how many different silly little ways we seek to divide each other up in categories of race, gender, religion, you can't take away the human. And even though it scares me, I should feel angry at the violence, the poverty, the injustice that permeates our earth. It doesn't taint my essence or tilt me towards something unsavory to feel that way. Okay. My nephew was playing with these blue light filter glasses I have and, as kids do, snapped off one of the arms. Whatever, I said. I can just use them with one arm. They'll be less secure, but it'll still function. Whenever I actually tried them on, the shape of the glasses and one remaining arm made them uncomfortable. Too uncomfortable. So I snapped off the other arm. And you know what? It's a little tenuous at times, but they're more functional now. Sure, I can't lean forward, but all in all, this is still better than one arm. If you're missing some of the core components of being human, if you can't name your emotions, if you lack human connection, if you don't value your own humanity, it may simply be easier to ignore or destroy what remains of these things. It takes work to fix things. You have to glue them together and hope they stick. You may find them falling apart again and again, and wonder if they'll ever be whole. But there's reliability in destruction. I didn't know if I could fix those glasses, but I did know I could take them apart.
and in many ways, controlling your disgrace, removing the tears from reality, is much more functional in the short term than learning how to let them fall.
So now I sit before you, a mustachioed man who now cries in public theaters. It only took me a quarter of a century to figure that one out. But truly, better late than never. You're not a man. I mean, you can be a man, but you're a human. The only difference between earnestness and cringe is if you agree. We're all cringe. There's nothing wrong with being earnest about who you are or how you feel. In the words of Gang of Youths, the heart is a muscle. I want to make it strong. And in the words of Benjamin Conti, take care of your heart. Do not let it sell you exaggeration. Take care of your heart. Give it room and escape stagnation. Loneliness is one hell of a drug. Allow yourself one appreciative hug. There will be no years of silence in the shadow of regret. I won't let it so betray me, though my soul got used to it. I will look at love as more than just an instrument of pain, and will give myself completely to the moving and the strange. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider interacting with the video to boost the algorithm, or consider supporting me financially like these three lovely people do on Patreon. You can also join for free for updates on future projects. Remember, you are capable and worthy of love. Share that with those around you. And good luck out there. I've never met anyone else that can do this, so please let me know if I'm not alone.